You know the vibes. Welcome back to another week here at the Hoop Genius podcast, brought to you by NBA 2K24. You can hit the link in our description and get your copy of NBA 2K24. I am Mo Mootsie. Alongside me, as always, is the three-time NBA champion, Mr. BJ Armstrong, and our weekly guest, the one and only Parking Lot Perry, Mr. Scott Perry, NBA executive in the building. How you guys doing?
Man, I'm doing great. I look forward to that every week.
Hey,
The parking lot exec-
come on, man.
Hey, I'm gonna get a T-shirt made that says "Parking Lot Perry."
Hey, it's on the way. It's on the way, bro. It's on the way. You guys had a good week?
Yeah, I had a good week, man. Had a good week. Really good week.
Man,
Excellent.
so I was out in Paris for the NBA Paris games, Brooklyn Nets and the Cleveland Cavaliers. That was a fun experience. But while I was out there, my phone was blowing up. I had all these Raptor fans hitting me up saying, Mo, you got to talk about this on the podcast. Mo, this is outrageous. So I don't know if you guys saw the Lakers and the Raptors game the other night, where the Lakers had an extraordinary advantage in the free throw shooting department, or even the free throw attempt department. And a lot of Raptors fans were not very happy about that. Did you guys see that game?
I definitely watched that game. I really watched that game from start to finish. And a few things that I saw. Number one, obviously the Raptors were playing without Jacob Poeltl. So Thaddeus Young was having to start at the center position. And the Lakers, rightfully so, really attacked the paint, mainly with Anthony Davis and LeBron James in a complementary style to it as well. And really set the tone for the game physically inside because they were overmatched. The Raptors were overmatched. Just didn't have anybody of size to match up with Davis. He did what he needed to do. He was physical. He drew a lot of contact, drew fouls legitimately. However, I thought the Raptors were just as aggressive attacking the paint at the other side.
They outscored the Lakers in the paint.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were really attacking that paint hard all night long. And then, when it got to the fourth quarter, to see the discrepancy in free throws, I think the Lakers took 23 free throws. The Raptors took just 2. So there, I understood the anger and how upset the Coach Darko was during the game, because I watched him. He was upset during the game with the officiating. And then after the game, when he really went on that extended rant and ultimately got fined for it. You hate to see such a large discrepancy. I had no problem with the Lakers going to the line, but I thought there was a number of missed opportunity calls for the Raptors. It's, when both teams are playing aggressive, there shouldn't be that big a disparity in the number of free throws shot. And that was their problem. I thought legitimately they had a gripe in that area, and it ended up costing them for the game. So I understand why your Raptors friends were calling upset with that game, but hey, it's in the books now, and the Lakers won the game.
A portion of that was the Raptors intentionally fouling. However,
at the very end, that's the last minute and a half.
But
so
however,
let's take away six. Take
that's what the
away
Lakers
6
said,
games.
right?
Exactly.
However, some things I noticed, it wasn't so much the fouls that the Lakers were getting. There just wasn't a consistency on the other side. The Raptors weren't getting the same call. And one thing that was very interesting to me is there was a couple of possessions where the referees would wait to see if the Lakers' shot attempt went in or not before blowing a whistle for the foul. And we all know, when the referee sees contact, they blow the whistle for the foul. Usually the ball's in the air or it's before the shot's really been released. But that kind of caught my eye. And then, as you said, Scott, the coach of the Raptors went off after the game and went on a little rant. BJ, from a player's perspective, seeing your coach go out there to the media, and I think he got fined $25,000 for this.
Yes.
Putting himself on the line in terms of that to criticize the officials. What does that do for the locker room and the belief those players have in that coach?
Well, guys, I'm going to go back a little bit. Mo, I don't know if you know this or not, but Scott knows this. My dad is an official.
BJ?
He was an official.
Every listener to the show knows this because you've told us this many, many times.
Okay. Well, I just want to clarify. So I definitely have, I have compassion for officiating because I would see my own father, how upset he would be when he had missed calls. Okay. He would be upset. And And it bothered him. It would bother him. He'd get on the phone with his friends. What could he do to make sure he got the call correct, so forth and so on. However, you ask from a player's perspective, when one team has 36 free throws and the other team has 13, and I know that other team, meaning the Toronto Raptors, they were attacking that paint, as you guys have clarified. I mean, they weren't just settling.
They were playing some very nice basketball.
Oh,
they were attacking the basket and getting to the paint. And there were a number of what I could see from my own television set of missed calls. I mean, just clear. Now,
yeah,
whether or not they want to, they have their, system where they send it back to Secaucus or wherever they send it. But there were a number of missed calls. Okay. So in saying this, what does this mean? I think what the coach did, I thought was terrific because he stood up for his guys and he put his money where his mouth was. He took the fine, but it had to be said because that's an opportunity and a moment and an opportunity to anyone who's coach, who's listening, is you have to stand up and fight for your team because those guys were playing extremely hard. And in my opinion, they played well enough to win the game on the road. And they were giving maximum effort. So I love the fact that he took that fine. He verbally displayed his displeasure with the calls. But more importantly, to me, that was a building or a moment where he's building trust and all of those things with his team in that moment, even in defeat, because you're constantly coaching. So to me, that was an exercise of leadership. I thought he displayed leadership. I thought he said what he had to say through the media, because Scott can attest to this. When you are an executive or a coach, sometimes you got to talk through the media. So I thought it was an excellent display of leadership. I thought it was terrific coaching. However, you don't like the public criticism. However, that was a moment in time where I thought it was necessary to let everyone know, oh, we're here. And his team needed to hear that from him. So you move on. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. I'm not holding it against the officials. However, in that instance, I thought that was an excellent display of gamesmanship and what needed to happen in a leadership position. I thought he needed to say that for his team, to have credibility when he faces those guys in the locker room, to say, you know what, coaches, he's rolling with us. And even though he knows better, I thought he had to do that in that moment.
Scott, from an organizational perspective, when you're in the front office, when things like this occur, what's the process kind of behind the scenes? Is there a way to, put a complaint to the league? Because we know that the Lakers, who typically get favorable calls, if you remember the bubble, when they played the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals, they actually wrote a letter to the league complaining about the way the games were officiating. And we did see slightly different officiating after that in that series. So what's the process, from the front office perspective?
Oh, no. From the front office perspective, you have what they call a TIW, which is a team inquiry website that after each game, and obviously this is available to all the teams, you submit what you deem to be questionable calls from the night before. It might be 1 or 2 calls. It could be 20 calls. And then the league must then respond to you, within 24 to 48 hours after they've studied those calls that you sent. And a lot of times what you'll get back either, no, we saw it this way, so that was the correct call by the official, or they may say that was a mistaken call for the official. What this whole process is supposed to do is just to have healthy communication back and forth between league and team. And it's an educational tool for those officials. And so that has been in place for a number of years now. I think it's probably utilized much more by teams. If it gets bad enough, you'll get on the phone. I'll get on the phone to powers that be. In this case now would be Joe Dumars, who's at the head of it, and give him a call and express my sentiments as to what I felt went on and register my strong feelings and complaints. And then, Joe would either agree, push back, whatever the case may be. But that really is the process in its entirety in terms of trying to just to get the games to be better officiated. And you know, what I will say about this in officiating, look, and BJ talked a little bit about it with his dad being official. Officiating is a tough job. It is an extremely tough job. And a lot of times it's a thankless job. And what I would say is when they're not the story of the game, you know, they became the story of the game. That's what the league doesn't want, what the teams don't want. They became more of the story of the game in that Lakers Raptors game, just like that same night. They were a little bit of the story in the Pacers and Boston Celtics game.
Yeah.
So you don't want that. So most of the times we don't get that. So what that is saying to you, the officiating by and large was okay or balanced out enough throughout the course of the game. Not to say that there weren't missed calls, but there were no calls that anybody felt that influenced the outcome of a game. And that's really what you're trying to avoid. You don't want the story to be this particular call or this particular pattern of calls favored one team so strongly that it influenced the outcome of a game.
Well, the NBA releases the last 2 minutes report every day. And Joe Mazzulla, after the Pacers Celtics game, said, "I'm not saying anything. I'm just waiting until 4 o'clock tomorrow." Where the referees review the last 2 minutes of the game and whether they got the calls right or wrong. The ending of that Celtics Pacers game, if you guys didn't see it, was Jaylen Brown taking an important shot with not much time left on the clock in a tied game. He gets hit in the back of the head whilst Buddy Hield, I think, is trying to block the shot. Buddy Hield said to Joe Mazzulla after the game that he hit him on the head. However, the ref said that it was a clean block. They challenged the call. The ref said it was a clean block. And then the last 2 minutes report also didn't call it a foul. So at some point, teams and fans are going to lose their faith in the officiating. And the way you see the game being refereed today with some of the fouls that are given is just getting out of hand. Do you think we're at a point where we're risking the integrity of the game because of what some of these referees are now calling?
I don't think we're going to risk the integrity of the game. Obviously, you know, the outrage is not good for the game. But keep in mind this, the NBA, even though they sent back, and this is Scott Perry's personal feeling, even though they sent back that report saying, no, it wasn't a foul from our perspective, trust me, internally, they're having some strong conversations with those officials and trying to clean that up, if you will, even though they haven't publicly admitted to, you know, what is going on. But
well, it makes me laugh because if you remember the Celtics-Lakers game from last season where Tatum fouled LeBron at the end and they said it wasn't a foul, the referee's official Twitter account put out an apology to the Lakers saying that they'll strive to be better. It's just interesting to me. I don't want to hear a Laker fan ever complain about referees, but
no. Well, look, I will say this, and I've never been able to really say this publicly before, and BJ will appreciate this, as you know, because obviously I've always been on the team side. But let's face it, and I think it's kind of a unwritten understanding, if you will. If you've got star players on your team, and I've long believed that there's, again, not that there's any quote unquote, there's no cheating going on, but the star players, that name on the back of the jersey, sometimes is going to get more of the benefit of the doubt than the 14th, 15th man on some roster out there playing. That's just a fact. Because look, it's a business. People are paying to see these stars play, and they want to see them be successful. So I think, you know, look, the stars didn't always have it when they first came in the league either. They had to earn their right to get the benefit of the doubt of some of these whistles. And I don't know if BJ agrees with all this. He played with one of the biggest stars in the league. But I from where I've sat all these years, I've always felt that, you know, again, the back of the jersey meant a little something. I'm not saying to every official, but to a number of officials. And again, when it comes to close calls, that back of the jersey would get a benefit of said calls.
I mean, this is one thing we spoke about, BJ, because I know you don't want to say anything about that. Well, one thing when we spoke about, the NBA partnering with sports betting companies and the prominence of betting in sports now, this is one thing now that fans in particular are very much raising their eyebrows at. And I'm not saying it happens, but now with sports betting being so prominent, if a player's line is to score over 30 points and they end up getting a whole bunch of free throws that helps them get that 30 points, it could cause the integrity of the game to be called into question. But over in Miami, Erik Spoelstra received a $120 million extension that will keep him with the Miami Heat for the next 8 years. It's not just the most amount of money that's been committed to an NBA head coach. It's the most amount of money committed to a North American coach of any sport. Now, Greg Popovich signed an $80 million extension with the Spurs last summer, so he's making more money per year. However, the length of Spo's contract, meaning that he makes about $15 million a year. So total, in terms of his total salary, he's making the most. The next on the list is Detroit's Monty Williams, who has finessed his way to $78.5 million on his contract. And then Steve Kerr at $9.5 million per year. And it's interesting that, the 4 highest paid coaches in the league, 3 of them are on teams that are playing pretty awful right now. So Erik Spoelstra.
Did I see shots fired? I saw shots.
It's just a fact.
But you have a great way of just slipping information in there, boy.
So Scott, what you don't know, Scott, is I went to law school. So when you you need to let the jury, you need to let the people know the context.
Yes, exactly.
The situation, right? So as Erik Spoelstra is one of the top 4 paid coaches in the league, and he's the only one who's doing a winning job this season. I want to know what you guys see. Scott, you've hired many coaches over your time as an executive. BJ, as a player, you've played under great coaches. What does Erik Spoelstra do that allows him to take teams every season that outperform their expectations?
A few things, but first of all, let me just publicly congratulate Coach Spoelstra. Well deserved. I think he's, one of the finest, if not the finest coach in the game right now, and the Miami Heat organization recognizes that. A couple things that come to play here. Erik Spoelstra understands how to set a standard of performance that he holds everybody in that building accountable to, players and coaches. He also has very clear and consistent communication. As BJ will attest to, that is huge when you're coaching a basketball team. Players look for consistency of message every single day. I don't care whether it's practice, shoot around, games. And I think Coach Spoelstra has demonstrated that over his long career thus far. Thirdly, I think a good coach, and Spoelstra has this, you have to have the ability to adapt to a lot of different personalities that come your way in the locker room. Because every player is not going to be the same. Every player is not going to learn the same. Every player is not going to respond to certain coaching the same. You have to have the ability to meet each player where he's at that particular time when he comes to your team, and then figure out how you're going to develop him and his ability so that he can maximize his talent as a player that ultimately helps maximize the team's ability to win basketball games. Couple of, examples. I mean, if you've watched Spoelstra over his career, he's had to manage star players, from, Dwayne Wade in the beginning and Shaq to when getting LeBron, and
he's the only coach that survived LeBron. We all know when LeBron don't want to coach, they're gone. And Erik Spoelstra is the only one who, when LeBron wanted him gone, Pat Riley said no.
And now you've got Jimmy Butler that's come in, who was, people thought was difficult to coach and manage. And you see what that has yielded. The guys have gone to a couple of finals. So he's shown that ability and to be able to do that. And then lastly, you talk about, I think one of his special talents is taking those players that a lot of other teams didn't think were good enough to be NBA players. But I think, he has a way of instilling confidence in them and identifying, okay, I can help develop this one particular niche skill that will help this player, the player do that at a level that's NBA level, yet fit into the overall good for our team, whether it's shooting, whether it's rebounding, whether it's defending. And he embraces that, gives those guys confidence in doing that. So he checks a lot of the boxes for me as a coach, and doing that kind of thing. The only other coach I can think about that I work with personally, that I watched, especially deal with a lot of different personalities, was Larry Brown in Detroit. I mean, and we had, as BJ could tell you, we had a lot of different personalities on that team, from Ben Wallace to Rasheed Wallace. Rasheed was vocal, beyond vocal, and but super smart as a player, very headstrong. Ben Wallace was no more headstrong player in our locker room and in the league at that time. You had Chauncey Billups, who was very charismatic. Rip
Who's
Hamilton,
now a head coach himself.
Exactly. Rip Hamilton, who was really wired to score, and Tayshaun Prince was kind of that quiet, cerebral guy, but he had a way of reaching all of them and really pulling the best out of each individual one. And he talked to them in one separate ways. And again, we bringing home the consistency of message. Every single day, he preached, defend, rebound, and share the basketball. Those were non-negotiables once you stepped into a Pistons locker room when he was coaching. And again, we saw what that yielded and what that did for that team and an organization. It resulted in going to 2 finals and winning 1 championship. So again, that's what you're looking for when you're hiring a coach, and what you're hoping as well too, that coach is equally yoked, if you will, with the front office. So the messaging that is coming both out of the front office and the coaching side is unified. I had a saying, when I was in the front office, that I said to our entire staff, we want diversity of thought, but with unity of purpose. And that is, to me, is the key when you're talking about managing a diverse group of people. And again, back to Erik Spoelstra, is something that he does, and he does it very well.
BJ, as a player, there are some people who hold a philosophy that coaches can only coach a certain amount of seasons before players start to tune out their voice and whatnot. How has Erik Spoelstra mastered the art of longevity in his role? Because it looks like he's never going to leave Miami anytime soon. And every season, he finds guys from the G League, the second round of the draft, undrafted players, and he helps them elevate.
Well, as both of you guys know, who I speak to quite regularly on the phone and every day practically, coaching comes down to me one simple thing, right? There's a lot of things, and people have their things that they highlight or mean something. But when you are in a position of leadership, I just boil it down to this one simple word. It requires courage to sit in that seat. You can't coach, especially in today's game, without courage. Scott and I've known Scott practically my entire life. Okay. And Scott and I, in our friendship, we are truth tellers to one another. That takes courage. It takes courage to be able to say, hey, BJ, you're my guy. However, that takes
that's real friendship.
That's now. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, Erik Spoelstra coaches with courage. Now, we can debate on his play calls. We can debate on his style of play. We can debate on all those things. However, that man has stepped up, and he has led that team, right, wrong, or indifferent. And he's done it with courage. Now, that to me that says everything that I need to know about leadership at any level, whatever it is you need to do. Now, the thing about Coach Spo that he's tapped in all my years of experience, I said, well, what is he doing? Like, is it his play calls? Is it his people? Is people skills? Is it his understanding of the game? In my humble opinion, he stepped into the secret. All right. What's the secret formula to coaching? The secret to coaching is the following. And I think every executive kind of knows this now in the NBA. When you go to Miami, you're going to get an A in the class. Mm-hmm. Every player, every role player that goes to Miami gets an A. But when they go to another team, I don't know what happens. Now, I just listened to my good friend Scott Perry talk about that with Larry Brown. There's something that you have in you where it's a selfless act where you say, whoever this person is, they're going to get an A in my class. That's a unique way of thinking. Some of these players that Miami have, they're not drafted. I don't know where they come from. They don't play for other teams. They get cut by other teams. But when they go to the Miami Heat organization, something happens that's different than the other places.
It must be something in the water down there in South Beach.
And let me tell you something. And they get paid when they go to other places.
Yep.
Yeah.
But when they go to the other places, they're not the same player.
Nope.
That to me, now he's into the rarefied air of coaching. And Coach Spo and the Miami Heat have figured that out now. So congrats to Coach Spo. I've admired this man for many years. This is not an accident, right? I happen to have played against Pat Riley's coach teams. Yeah. He was phenomenal. And you can see what courage will do to an individual. It'll do to a player, to a person, and in this instance, to a coach. And it's one of the requirements that you have to have, especially when you are in a position of leadership. So to all the coaches, players, and people who want to lead, Coach Spo is another example. It's very few that do that. Very few that have the ability to do that, let alone the courage to do that. And to me, he has achieved that level of excellence that a few have had the opportunity to do, because that is very difficult, my friends, of what it is. So that's what I see.
And indulge me just for 1 second to switch from the basketball form to the football form, and I think BJ knows where I'm going.
I'm shooting out.
No, but you're talking about coaching and courage, and Mike Tomlin, who's the coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who is a friend in all transparency, but I've had the opportunity to be around that team and that franchise for a number of years, and he has a saying: "The standard is the standard." And to watch no matter when I drop in there, that is true. Everybody is held to that standard. They know the expectation and the courage that he has, that he demonstrates every single day. And just, whether things are going well, not well, or just kind of even keel. And that is huge. That is leadership. His ability to keep people together through turmoil, that is huge. And Spoelstra's been able to do that as well in Miami. If it's not all been smooth sailing in Miami. They hit rough patches during the year, but he continues to stick with the same message. He doesn't waver. Again, that consistency. And eventually that's going to take hold with your players. And then you know what happens? And BJ can speak to this here. Your players start talking that way in the huddle. And in the locker room without the coach. Coach,
that's what we call culture.
Coach said, that's what coach can step aside, because you know what? Now the players are holding each other accountable to said standard. And that's when you know you got something special.
Bob Myers, I hope you're listening, because Bob Myers recently switched from basketball to football. So then he's picking the new coach of, what is it, the Commanders or something. So Bob, I hope you're listening. But one question I get from people, because they watch me, break down film and talk about the game and stuff, and people ask me, have you ever considered coaching? And Erik Spoelstra came from a similar background of he works in the video room for the Miami Heat. And I say, no, I've not considered coaching. Number one, what I know about basketball is a fraction of what Erik Spoelstra knows about basketball. He's in a whole different league when it comes to that. Number two, I don't have a father who is a multi-year NBA executive who made sure that when Pat Riley signed with the Miami Heat, he wasn't allowed to hire a new video guy for the first 2 years so that his son wouldn't be fired. But aside from that, let me ask you guys this question, because this is something I think about often. Scott, you said on a previous episode of the show that a coach's job is to take players to a place where they couldn't take themselves. And from my perspective, if I'm hiring a coach, I would want preferably a former player who's achieved at the highest level to be my coach, because how do you get players on your current squad to listen to someone who's never been there and done it themselves? Erik Spoelstra comes from working in a video room. He's not been out on the court in the NBA winning championships and being a star. So how do you get a superstar like Jimmy Butler or LeBron James or Dwayne Wade to actually give you that level of respect and understand that although you may not have been able to do it physically yourself, you can tell them how to do it to help them reach the peak of their powers?
Well, again, you remember, Erik Spoelstra has been tutored under Pat Riley for a number of years. Pat Riley has extreme respect throughout this league, from former players, current executives, former executives throughout. So I'm sure that, that was helpful in the beginning when you make that introduction. Guys will look at him and say, okay, he's coming from the Pat Riley tree, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to Erik Spoelstra's credit, I'm sure his communication style is a way that, not talking like from a former player, but just as a former person working in the midst of all of this greatness, if you will, and watching teams that were successful and other teams that weren't successful, being able to impart that knowledge to his players. And you can get buy-in from your players. So it doesn't have to be a former player to be able to do that. Yeah, does a former player have that in his arsenal, in his bag, to be able to say that to other players? Yes, he does. But that former player needs more than just his past experiences to show to the players. Again, like I said at the very beginning, you set a standard of performance and you hold everybody accountable to that. That's 1 through 15. You can't have one set of standards for your star players and another set of standards for your role players. Everybody's got there's a certain level of expectation that everybody must meet. And so I don't care who the coach is, you have to have that, and your communication has to be consistent and clear. Because you talk about giving letter grades out. I used to say this when I was a college coach. I'll give you an example. And I can remember when I was assistant at University of Michigan, and we used to meet every day before practice. And we would plan practice, but part of our discussions in that meeting were talking about players and how they're doing in the classroom and their progress reports and all. And so you invariably have a couple players that were struggling in class. So and so is failing this. He's going to need help, tutor, whatever the case may be. And I can always remember saying in one of those meetings, because one of my fellow coaches had said, well, as we were planning practice, well, we can slip this in. The guys won't really recognize that. And I said, hold on a minute. Time out. I said, I know we just got done talking about who was getting an A or D or whatever in biology and English. I said, but let me explain something to you, because I know this directly from the players. Every last one of our players is an A student when it comes to studying our message and listening to our message. They are looking for any inconsistency from what any of us may say. So let's not ever assume that we can get anything over them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is a mistake that coaches can make thinking that they are above or smarter than the players. No, your players are all A students when it comes to analyzing you. And the ones that could be slightly behind, guess what? Their teammates are going to bring them up to speed and say, no, young fella, you missing that. This is what's really being said and what's really going on. So that to me, I think back to Erik Spoelstra, he has figured that out very well. He stayed true to his own personality. And I'm sure BJ can tell you this, and you know this too, Mo. Even though he had all of Pat Riley's backing, he could not be Pat Riley.
Mm-hmm.
He had to find his own voice and be Erik Spoelstra. Pat Riley's tutelage helped, I'm sure provide a good base for him, but he's been able to stay true to who he is as a person. Because if a player and your players think you're trying to be somebody other than who you are, you're going to lose them right away.
Absolutely. So when I'm a GM, I'm not going to be Scott Perry or BJ Armstrong. I'm going to be Mo Mooney, and I'm going to start every press conference with, the vibes.
Hey, Mo. And guess what? If you win enough, that's going to work just fine.
All we do is win. Exactly. Well, elsewhere around the league this week, we've got a lot to talk about today. Elsewhere around the league, a report from the NBA, investigation that they dived into recently, or over the course of many years now, they've been collecting the data, said that there is no correlation between players being load management and reducing the risk of them getting injured. And we looked at the numbers of how many games superstars missed and how many games players missed in total over the past, 20 years in the study. And obviously now we see record levels of games being missed by players. But the load management phenomenon, which is where players don't play in certain games to kind of preserve themselves for the rest of the season and the playoffs, isn't actually being seen to be helping. I wanted to know this from you, Scott, because when I talk to people about load management, I talk to players about load management, and they say, no, we want to play, but our teams are telling us we got to rest this game. The trainer says we got to rest. The coach says, the front office says we got to rest. When I talk to front office and coaches and trainers, they say, no, we want the guys to play, but they want to rest. So, Scott, I'm going to ask you straight up from behind the scenes, who is behind all of this load management in the NBA?
In all truthfulness, Mo, I think it varies from organization to organization. Talking to Scott Perry, when you sign a contract with the team I'm with, it says you're going to play 82 games. That's what the NBA season is, and whatever playoff games is going to be. So that's going to always be my expectation. Now, I would never want to put a player at risk, but the whole tenor of our organization is that, you're going to play, and the expectation is you're going to play each and every night. And, and I think your medical staff, that you're letting the medical staff know that our expectations and our guys are going to play. Again, we don't want to put anybody at risk. If somebody is hurt, we're not going to put you out there. But it's different being hurt versus being sore, an nagging ache here or there. That's that's something different. And I think the league is getting this right, and finally, because there is no empirical science that says, okay, load management definitely is going to help keep guys from being injured in games. I'll give you just a little historical, at least this is my vantage point. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I just can recall in the era that I was coming up, I didn't play in the NBA, played in college, but then, obviously BJ played. If I'm not mistaken, BJ, you guys used to fly commercial, correct? And you were playing 82 games. So, and you had more back-to-backs then than there are now, for sure. But when you played a back-to-back then, you couldn't fly out right after the game that night.
No private jet,
right? There was no private jet. You were flying that next morning and then playing that same day that you arrived. So as I've kind of done my own little analysis in this area, I mean, again, and you had guys playing more games then, especially your star players, they were all pushing to play 82 games. What I think has changed now is that the I was going to say science departments, but the medical departments of each and every team have grown exponentially. So you have a lot of different thoughts and ideas about what goes into preserving a player's wellness over a 9-month stretch. And so when you get those competing thoughts, if you will, I think that's why you get certain teams that, that load management, those departments may weigh a little heavier with front office and coaches, and they decide to sit said players. What the league has done now is said, okay, well, if you're going to be considered all NBA or for MVP or whatever, we're going to set a bar of 65 games that you got to play now.
Unfortunately,
so the whole, yeah, to minimize, hopefully to minimize some of that wrestling. I would have liked to seen it at 70 games myself, but 65.
It's bad for fans who pay money to go to the games. It's bad for the TV broadcasters who pay a lot of money, to broadcast these games if the star players aren't playing. But as you alluded to, talking about when BJ played, they were flying commercial, so that's just on regular airlines. They didn't have all the team chefs and the masseuse and the cryotherapy chamber and all of this stuff that we have now. However, when you look at the data, in the 80s and 90s, star players, the group defined by being an all-star or all-NBA selection, missed on average 10.5 games per season. This decade, since 2020, it's 24 games per season. So the schedule is still 82 games. Life is easier in terms of, the transport and the medical facilities and the rehabilitation and the masseuses after the game and everything. Technology and science is better. BJ, why are players missing more than double the amount of games now than they did in the 80s? Keep it 100.
This is Dr. Armstrong. You asking this?
That's a loaded question. If I knew that question, then man, we'd all be sitting.
I should have asked Ben Simmons. He was in Paris last week too.
Oh, I really don't know, and I mean, I can speculate and. Just like everyone else, I can begin to speculate and say, oh, back when we played, but I'm not going down that path. I think now it's a different era. And what I mean it's a different era is, I think it was Scott, one of you guys said, the main thing has to remain the main thing. 82 games is 82 games. And in my humble opinion, and I say this with great humility, you have to play a style that can allow you to play 82 games. Okay. I'm just going to, at the current pace and space that I observe, just as an ex-player, ex-executive, and ex-watching the game, it's impossible to play at that pace for 82 games. It's impossible to play an entire game at that pace for 82 games. I mean, for an entire game, let alone 82 games. When I came into this league as an amateur player, as a collegiate player, I was introduced to this word called professionalism that I had to learn very quickly. Like, what's the difference from playing a 35-game schedule to an 82-game schedule, plus the playoffs, travel, and all of the things that you guys mentioned? So I had to find out very quickly what does it really take to be a professional, and what is being a professional is all about. And what I learned very quickly, like literally my first week on the job, is 3 things that happens when you are a professional. You have to learn how to compete. If you want to stay a professional, you got to win. Okay. And while you're playing those games, you have to entertain. Because you are in the business. You are in the entertainment business. Okay, I'm going to say that again. You have to compete, meaning you can't win every game, but you certainly better try to win every game. You better learn how to do that. Then after you learn how to compete, you better start winning some games, because these executives like Scott Perry, if you don't win enough games, he's going to get you out of there.
It's a cold world.
Okay. And then while they're charging these $2,000, $3,000 for courtside tickets,
Oh, it's
You
way
want to
more than
be
that,
you,
B.
yeah,
Oh,
you want
oh,
to
B.
entertain. That's what I'm saying. I'm just trying to say, on the average in this league, you better have some entertaining moments during the course of the game. That's what professional sports is all about. Now, somehow, in my humble opinion, we're doing more entertaining now than actually competing and winning and doing these things. There's an imbalance that I see happening in professional sports where the entertainment side of the business suddenly now has become our business. Well, I don't really have to play 82. I'll just play when the playoffs begin because that's all that really matters anyway. Well, I'll not play because, if it was, quote, a playoff game, I would play. But because it's a regular season game, these are things I'm just observing.
Do you
This is
think
just
playing through, because there's injuries, but there's also just, having an ache, having a pain, having a knock. Do you think playing through those things conditions your body to give you that durability? And if you're a player now who rests whenever you are not feeling 100%, it makes you more fragile?
Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, no, I think so. Look, that's what training camp is all about. When guys come to training camp, invariably you're gonna be sore. And again, going back in time where there were way more two-a-days, but you're building your body up to be able to withstand the rigors. So, so there's soreness entering into your body, right, BJ? After the first couple of days of practice.
That's the whole point of going to training camp is to learn how to play when you are not at 100%.
Exactly.
That's the point. You're never at 100%. The fact when I hear people say, well, I could play if it was a playoff game, but I just want to get healthy and get totally healthy before I get back on the court. You're like, that's called mental toughness. That's what it's called. That's why you do it. Okay. Hey, man, I ain't really got it today, but I know this game means just as much today that it will mean next week, or I got to figure out that every game, every day provides a different competitive view.
But also,
you got to figure out how to win that game today. So it's a challenge every single day you walk on the court. So when I see that and I hear that, I go, well, that's a little different. That's a little odd.
The part that's confusing to me, as Scott said, if you sign as a player to a contract, you got to play 82 games. Professional sports is the only job in the world where if you don't feel like doing your job, you don't have to do your job. If we only recorded shows on days where I felt 100%, we would have recorded 0 episodes ever. Because I never feel 100%, right? I don't sleep. I'll be working all the time. Like, being in NBA is like the only place where if you just don't feel like doing your job, you can put on a fancy outfit and sit on the sidelines and they all come and take pictures of you anyway. And it doesn't matter if your team wins or loses. Because if you lose, oh, our best player wasn't playing, we'll win when he's back in the lineup. Like, to me, it baffles me that if you just don't feel like it, oh, I'm low managing today. Oh, it's a back-to-back. We flew in late last night. I'm not playing today. I just, I feel for all the fans that pay the money to watch the games and then their favorite players aren't there.
I had a coach used to always say this, guys. You can't get wet from the word water. You got to jump in there.
I like that.
Okay. You're not gonna know what this NBA is really all about until you jump in there and you see what it's really about. It's nothing that I can say, Scott can say, Mo can say, even Coach Spo can say about the NBA, because you're not gonna know what it's really about until you jump in there. And that is your responsibility that you said when you wanted to become a professional player.
One of the things that I used to always say, the number one ability for a player is availability.
There you go.
Remember that, Mo. In your gym, the number one ability, okay, all that high flying, running, jumping, dunking, 3-point shooting. If you're only doing it for 45 games, what good is that really going to do for us, for the team? So no, the number one ability is availability.
Absolutely. So it's that time of the week where hopefully the teams we talk about have their players available. And this is the teams that we're focusing in on and watching this week.
Well, Mo throw those
Hoping.
jabs in quick. He throw those jabs in
Man,
quick.
you want to see me in the ring.
yeah. Mo must have been a boxer in his former life, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
That's a great
man, Muhammad Ali. So, when we were sitting down to record the show, Scott said to me, Mo, which team are you going to talk about this week? I said the Utah Jazz. He said same. So let's start by talking about the Utah Jazz because they're on a heater right now. They beat the Sixers, the Bucks, the Nuggets, and the Raptors. All of those victories by double digits. That win versus the Raptors, they crushed them on the rebounding battle, but they also had 5 players who had 5 or more assists. So the ball is really moving. And the reason why they're intriguing me so much right now, with a month until the trade deadline, they're currently in the 10th spot, meaning they're a play-in team. They're only 3.5 games out of a guaranteed playoff spot. This week they're playing the Warriors, the Thunder, and the Rockets. Now, if they win those games, I think the Rockets might be next week, but they're playing a bunch of Western Conference teams this week. But if they win those games, extend this 4-game winning streak to 7, 8 games, and they're in the 8, 7, 6 seed, they go from being a team at the deadline where everyone's trying to poach, they're trying to get how many draft picks do you want for Lauri Markkanen? How can we get Kelly Olynyk to add to our bench? How can we get this player, that player? They go from that to being a team, well, we're going to be in the playoffs. We may as well make a run at it. So I'm looking at the Utah Jazz. What have you guys seen from them, Scott, as they were a team you were big on this week?
No question. They're 10-2 in their last 12 games. Lauri Markkanen, who's a name obviously that you've heard a lot about as a potential trade guy, but the guy was just an all-star last year, and he's averaging 24 and 9 again this year, and he's a young player. So to me, it would have to be something awful special to get rid of him. Jordan Clarkson, once again, is right in the thick of things for 6th man of the year. He's playing terrific off the bench, averaging 18 and 5 assists. What I'm also seeing is they're getting contributions up and down the roster. I believe they got 6 guys averaging double figures, and I think they're starting Chris Dunn now. He's not averaging double figures, but he's giving them good minutes as a starting point guard. He can defend at the point of attack. And so I like how they're gone deep into the bench. Colin Sexton, as a competitor, he plays hard each and every night. The rookie Keontae George is played really well. And they're getting good minutes out of him. So I think what they're going to continue to figure out, okay, who is going to be the core moving forward, but they have something in place. And let me not be remiss in giving Coach Will Hardy some credit. I think he's done a very good job with really utilizing his entire roster. He's not just locked into the same rotation if things aren't going well. He's unafraid, and as BJ and I talked earlier today about one of the great qualities of any coach is showing some courage. He shows some courage over on that sideline to do what's right and not be afraid to make some change. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do this week because it is a huge week for them. They can go from being 20-20 at the time of this recording, and do they go 4 games over 500? Do they fall 4 games below, or do they stay at 500? Let's watch and see. It's exciting.
BJ, you seen much of the Utah Jazz recently? What are you thinking?
Well, guys, the best part about being a professional is that you prepare for everything. And during the course of the season, the length of the season, you're going to see some good things, you're going to see some bad things, you're going to see everything in between. I think this team has done a really good job of just weathering the storm, because last year they got off to this quick start and they had some expectations. Danny Ainge, he tinkered a little bit with the roster over the summer, and they've had some injuries. Lauri Markkanen was out, so forth and so on. And then suddenly, over the last 10, 12 games or so, you look up there, 10th place or something, somewhere around there?
10th
Okay.
place. Yeah, the 10th place.
Right.
Had the Lakers and the Warriors.
The thing I love about the one thing I loved about being a professional is that you have to learn how to never let your emotions get in the way of doing your job. When things are bad, you can't get down. When things are good, you can't get too high. You got to figure out how to get the job done with this critical sand, no matter what. A champion is going to figure it out no matter what obstacle you put in between them. Now, this team right here, the Utah Jazz, they've shown me they have a little persistence with them. They got a little toughness. Now I got to take them serious, going, all right, they're not a team that started off good, started off hot, and then they're just playing because they're playing well. They actually lost some games. They actually were kind of like, Lauri Markkanen was in the news just a week ago talking about maybe he's on the trading block. And all of a sudden, you go, they got a little toughness. There's something, as Scott and I like to say, is an example. There's something inside of them. Okay. There's something now you got to say, this team got a little something about them. So what they've shown me is that they've done a really good job as an organization is putting together a group of professionals, because it's very easy to just jump on board when things are going well. But now I've seen this team kind of dig themselves out of a ditch. And now you're saying they might be in the play-in. I mean, think about this. They might be they're above the Lakers, I think, right now. If I looked at they're above the Lakers and the Warriors. Okay, so there's something there. Clearly they have talent. I think you guys, give the coach credit. There's some leadership there. And now you're saying, what this team is about. So I think that's a great choice, but I want to give those guys credit, because I love it when I see young people exhibit confidence, but more importantly, they have the mental toughness to do it. Because we talk about these things, but it's one thing to talk about it, and then it's another thing to go out there and actually perform it.
That was the word I was thinking about. Is there's a team confidence now, and that can be very dangerous for opponents. They believe now that they can go any night they go into a game that they can win, and that's a big part of the battle.
And Scott, you and I being from Detroit, and we love boxing. And you know what? When you get punched and you see somebody get off that mat, that means you're still in a fight.
Exactly.
Okay. And right now, the Utah Jazz, they should have been knocked out by now. They should already be talking about the lottery, the draft, and all these things. And they was like, no, we still here. We still fighting. Right. So I love the character of this group and what they stand for, because that is very hard to do, guys. And give those guys credit.
So, BJ, which team are you looking at this week? And don't say the Pistons, please.
Well, I am looking at
my about to see 28 more losses. No, I'm not trying to see that.
I'm looking at these Lakers right now. I'm looking at these Lakers. I want to get real. I want to take a real shot at this.
I love taking shots at the Lakers.
At the essence of any relationship is love. That's the essence of it. Right now, the Lakers to me are at a critical moment as a team, where some of those players are at in their careers, because they don't have 4 or 5 years left with this group. This isn't a group that's going to be good.
They might just have this year if LeBron
whatever it is. Okay. But love is the essence of any relationship. And when you go through tough moments in anything, you got to love it to keep on going. Right now, guys, the Lakers, either this is going to work or this is just going to be, it's going to be over. I don't think there's anything in between with this group, because where their two best players are at, talking about LeBron James and Anthony Davis, they're in it right now. They're, as far as their career, where they're at. The players they've surrounded them with, the role players, they are there to support those two players. And right now, those guys, this team has got to figure this out. And I'm just watching from afar. But Scotty, if they don't figure this out quickly, this could be a disaster of a season for them. And here's why I say that. It's because in order to get something, if you make a trade, you got to give up something.
Yeah.
Okay? You got to give up something. You can't just, well, we're going to give you this, and then we're going to get a starter back. No, that's not how this works.
Right.
So this team doesn't have a lot. The window is closing. LeBron is 39. And I say this, Mo, you've been hearing me say this for years now. Just give me what you got at 39. Anthony Davis, he's been healthy this year, and hopefully he'll be healthy for the next whatever years he plays.
Every year.
Right now, I'm concerned about this team and where they're going, because this team wasn't put together to just get to the playoffs. This team was put together to have a shot to try to win the whole thing.
I'm pretty sure
now they're not even in the play right now. And I'll say the last thing, they're not even in the play-in game right now.
Right.
So I think there's major concern what's going on out here in Lakerland. And I hope that they turn it around, but it's not looking good right now, guys.
I'm pretty sure the clutch Lakers are going to find a way to get DeJounte Murray over there. Hey, I just caught it like I see it, B. Come on. Time will tell. We got a month until the trade deadline.
Yeah, but to get a major starter like that, I don't know if the Lakers have enough assets. Again, to get him, and he's a very good player. I like DeJounte Murray. But if you're Atlanta, you're going to be entertaining offers from around the league. Right. And you got to do what's best for your organization, and you're not going to be compelled to take a discount to send him to the Lakers just because that's going to help the Los Angeles Lakers. Those guys got, those guys' jobs on the line down there in the front office in Atlanta. So they got to if they're going to trade him, they better get back a starting level player and some assets. And
they got to at least get back Austin Reeves, and those type of players. So that's what I'm saying. So I just think they're at a point in a critical moment in time where at some point you got to say, is this the group that can push it over the top?
Yeah.
At some point, it's not like, we're saying, well, they have room for improvement. This is who they are currently, and this is probably who they're going to be. Right? You hoping they can maintain this level of play. However, right now, as the famous quote, we are who we are. This is who they are right now. And what is going to be necessary to push them over the top? And right now, that means they're going to have to add more depth to their roster, because currently, as is, they're not capable of getting it done.
Scott, seeing as I took the Utah Jazz, which is the team you're looking at then this week?
Well, one of the teams that they're going to play this week, and that's below them, is the Golden State Warriors. We just got done talking about the Lakers being one of them, but I think Golden State, as we currently speak, sits at number 12. And so I'm anticipating this week, I think, the return of Draymond Green, even though it hasn't been announced officially, but I would assume that he will hit the floor at some point. And let's, see what type of impact that he can have. They had a big win in Chicago last night going on the road. They did not play well on their long homestand, which really put them in the, helped put them in the current position that they're in right now. But look, time has really run out on this team too, as well as what we were talking about with the Lakers. There's major concerns with this team. If they don't make a stand now, then I think you're going to be, looking at a team that's going to be making a lot of change, whether it's at the deadline or entering into the summer.
Well, they're 12th. The Lakers are 11th. Which team finishes higher in the regular season standings, and which team goes further in the playoffs?
You're assuming they're both going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, well, this is, you tell me.
Exactly. Because right, yeah. But see, again, who's going to fall out? So you got to hope, if you're the Lakers and Golden State, look at the standings.
The Jazz lose.
So the Jazz, who just recently entered into that realm, okay, you're going to hope that they're going to fall out, and you're going to hope maybe Houston, with them being a young team, but Houston has been very good at home. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to say the Lakers have a little better chance of finishing stronger than the Warriors. Just, they got more size, with Davis and LeBron and, some of the backups there. I just think if they can keep it, they'll figure out a way to stay in that play-in mix. I know they went that route last year, playing all the way to the conference finals. That's not the preferred method, but they've done it. I just think, and if they matched up against one another right now, I would slightly favor the Lakers over the Warriors, despite Golden State's, vast championship experience. Obviously LeBron's got a lot of it himself, but still, I just think from a talent perspective and size perspective, and just kind of, at least the Lakers have shown me this year a stretch, even though it was a small stretch. And when we talked about that in-season tournament, they showed an ability to raise their level up and play well for a couple of weeks there. So
I think the Lakers are positioned to be able to make a move in terms of trading much better than the Warriors, because the Warriors, you have Steph, Clay, Draymond, who they've seemed pretty reluctant to move. Then you've got Chris Paul, who's injured. And the only player that they could really then move is Andrew Wiggins, who still has 4 years left on his contract with more money coming in every year. He looks like he's regressed massively. I don't know what's going on with him outside of basketball, but on the court, at least, he's not playing how he did in the year that they made their championship run. And then the rest of their roster is, Gary Payton, Kevon Looney, and then it's their rookies, Kuminga, not the rookies, but the players they drafted, Kuminga and Moody, who's supposed to be their future. And then it's a bunch of minimum guys. Whereas the Lakers, you've got D'Angelo Russell, you've got Rui Hachimura, you've got Gabe Vincent, you've got pieces that you could package together in a trade to move. So I think they're set up for things to be theoretically easier at the trade deadline than it is for the Golden State Warriors, largely because they've not tried to commit to 2 timelines like Golden State has. But only time will tell. BJ, who do you think is going to have a better finish to the season, the Lakers or the Warriors?
Well, I was surprised in listening to Scott's answer. I would have thought that Scott would have picked Golden State to finish better. And here's why I say that is because during the course of a regular season game, right, with travel, the Golden State Warriors play a style or brand of basketball that resembles or rewards people who shoot threes, and they play faster. When you watch the Lakers, and I watch them quite frequently living out here, is they suddenly now have a 39-year-old point guard who's playing that position. And that's unfair to think that he can provide that level of pace during the course of the game during a regular season. However, now when you get to the playoffs, I think, that's a different game. But in the way the regular season plays, as I was just watching them just last game, when you start running this team and getting them out there, they just don't play with the player, with the exception of LeBron James, who plays downhill. Well, the Warriors last night, they were down, 15, 20 points, and they came back and won just because, as parking lot Perry would tell you, sometimes that 3 ball is going in and that will cover up a lot of mistakes. But I mean, I think the Warriors probably, once they get Draymond back in the fold, they probably, I think during the course of a regular season, are probably a better team to get through the regular season in the way that we play today. However, I think the Lakers, if they were to get to the playoffs, would probably be a better team that would play in the playoffs. But you got to do the regular season before you get there. So I think the Warriors right now will probably get through the regular season a little better just because they play a style of play. I think they probably bring Wiggins back into the starting fold. I think they probably put Draymond back with Looney and do all those things, and they'll win. They'll play 500 basketball, maybe 60% basketball moving forward, and I think that'll be enough to at least get them in the play-in moving forward.
Oh, those are good points. There's no question about it. I guess if you had asked me this a week and a half ago, I might have said Golden State, but I got really concerned when I watched, I think it was Toronto and then New Orleans come in there back-to-back and beat the Warriors by 30 plus, almost, each at home. And I know there was no Draymond, but there's something just missing there. And again, I keep feeling like, and both of them are guilty of this, meaning the Lakers and Golden State, but both teams, in Golden State in particular, seems like they're still trying to grab back at yesteryear and how everybody used to play and everybody, was before. And I think you're reaching back to something that's not going to be there consistently anymore. And so we'll see. That's why we got to still play the games.
Man, I can't wait to see. Let us know in the Discord server who you think is going to have a stronger finish to the season, the Lakers or the Warriors. Either way, I'm going to be very happy as long as both of them are miserable and at the bottom of the standings. So, Scott, thank you for joining us once again here at the Hoop Genius podcast. BJ and I are going to be rocking with you guys for the rest of the week. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Already looking forward to next Monday's show. Appreciate both of you. And until next time, get buckets.